Yeah, so I took my first drink at 12 years old. Later on, tried my first joint, and that started me on the road to smoking a lot of pot. I smoked pot most of my teens, 20s, and 30s. It did cause me to not take life very seriously. Quit high school when I turned 18. When I got into my early 20s, at that time I got married, had my first child, and about 25 years old was turned on to crack cocaine, and that's what bit me. It was just a lot of chaos, and as it went on, it got worse. I started going up into the ghettos and disappearing for days on end, and leaving my wife and kids at home alone, and not having a vehicle or food in the refrigerator, but I was out getting high. Going into my 30s, I started to want to stop, but couldn't. I would try periods of not using, and then, chaos would ensue again, and back and
Just
forth.
white knuckling it where you weren't using?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I got sent to my first rehab in my very early 30s, and I didn't want to go, but, it was kind of, I needed to go, but I didn't want to go. Seriously thought about jumping out of the car on the way there. It scared me to death. I stayed there a month, came back within a month, picked back up again. A couple more years passed. I went to a second rehab, stayed there 2 months, came back 6 months later, relapsed.
This is mid-30s by now, yeah? Mm-hmm.
As I went on, it was in about another year, I think, I went to my third rehab. And spent a couple months out there, got back. I don't even think it took that long, maybe 6 months, and I was back out using again. There came a point where the consequences finally caught up to me, and the wife and the kids packed up and left. I remember one time as I was leaving the house, looking back and seeing my son standing at the back door, knowing I wasn't coming home. I left there saying I'll be right back, but he had heard that enough that he knew I wasn't coming home. In tears, I just started bawling, man, because there were many times that I would drive on my way to go use, crying because I didn't want to. The last night that I used, I was laying in my bed with a pistol in my hand, and I didn't want to blow my brains out. I didn't want to live, but I didn't want to die. I didn't want to live like that anymore. I didn't, and it just felt like darkness dancing around me. I don't know how else to put it. And there was a moment where, I believe God spoke to me through my youngest daughter's voice and said, "Please, Daddy, don't. We love you." I felt God telling me, I want you to go to prayer tonight. And I never went to prayer meeting. I would go to church on Sundays. I hadn't been there in 3 months at that point. That evening, I went to church. I didn't speak to anybody. I went in, I fell on my face, and I just, I surrendered my life to Christ in a full way. I gave him everything. I told him, I don't care if, what I have or what I don't have. I just don't want to live separated from you anymore. When I got up the next day, I was different. And I knew I was different. I woke up feeling like a different person. The urge to use was gone. The cravings were gone. The obsessive thinking. And, it was strange because I hadn't lived without that. Somewhere it connected my head to my heart, where it was real to me, and I believe, I believe God reached down and took it. As of the 27th of September, that was 7 years ago. I remember calling my sponsor and being like, I just don't have any more answers, man. I'm at the end of myself with this. And he said, well, finally we can get something done. I started, attending meetings regularly. I did what he told me to do. I quit making excuses to do recovery how I wanted to do recovery. Day to day, I got up every day. I read, I prayed, and I just asked God every single day to direct me and help me stay sober that day. My recovery always looked like, well, my kids are going to come back and love me now, and
everything's going to be perfect overnight.
Yeah. And it's all going to be perfect right now and right away, and that instant gratification. And when I let that go, and I accepted the path as God was going to have it for me, there was a lot of freedom in that. So about 4 years ago, my pastor and I started talking about trying to get a faith-based meeting together. Some other ones have cropped up in that time, but we started a life recovery program here about 3 years ago at our church, and I am one of the ministry leaders of that. It's growing, and people are getting set free, and just God is just moving in that, and we're seeing miracles happen. It's good.
I remember being very aware of the chaos in my home from like a very young age, even at 6. Just a lot of chaos, a lot of feelings of like depression around the house because my mom and my dad would be fighting a lot. Through him leaving, not coming back, there would just be a lot of fights. There was nothing I wanted more than for everybody to just get along. As a teenager, I remember starting to go to church when I was right around 10 or 11, and it would always be this, it was just fantastic because that was whenever things were okay. So I remember going to school and putting on a smile, and we would always kind of be protective about the secrecy of my dad's addiction and stuff. I couldn't focus at all anytime I was ever there because all I could think about is my dad home? Is my dad okay? I do remember a lot of times though when we started to get into church and stuff like that, there would be times of his sobriety, 3 months or 6 months, and then there would be like these promises made, like I'm never gonna do that again or whatever it was. Like if I came home and like the dishes weren't, like I had like these things that I could sense like my dad went out to use.
Indicators.
And I would get my hopes up, and then I'd get let down, and then I'd get my hopes up, and then I'd get let down, and I would always fight on behalf of my dad because I cared about him. Like I still saw his heart, I still knew who he was, like he loved us. I didn't understand his addiction. He would always just say, you don't understand, but I always thought it was like this thing where like, dude, you're making this choice. Like what is this? You're just always leaving us. Why can't you just stay with us? Why can't you choose us? Because even though my dad had these problems, like I just remember saying, I never ever want to do that. I never want to use drugs or whatever. But what finally broke for me was when my parents got divorced and we moved out. And that's what felt like the sever. Once my parents got divorced, and I remember saying for the first time, like, oh, I'll smoke something. And then it wasn't long after I smoked weed for the first time. Just instantly, I was just smoking weed every day. It numbed the pain. Lived in an apartment upstairs, using drugs and alcohol, smoking every day. Started making rap music. I used rap music as a child to like be an outlet for me, because it felt like they understood my pain. Tried going to school, never took school seriously, never had the dedication. It wasn't that I didn't feel like I was smart enough, but I never felt like I would find fulfillment in getting my degree and getting a job and having like a good life. Like I wanted to do like way above that. Like I wanted to become a superstar to prove to all the people who doubted me. It was like how I found my acceptance from people and how I was going to get people's attention, because I just felt like I could never get the attention that I desired. I started using cocaine for the first time, something I decided before I was never going to do. I never wanted to be like my dad, as I put it. I never wanted to use drugs like that. I remember trying to feel like I had things under control, but becoming so numb that I knew I was going to wake up in the morning. I'd go to the Mexican restaurant, start drinking, start using drugs, whatever happened that day. I didn't really care. I had my music that I was eventually going to become this rap star. So that's what I was banking on. And if it didn't happen, then my life was just going to go to crap, basically. And one day, I went to the bar, I drank a bunch, I blacked out, and I was driving. And I had a couple different plans with different friends. They fell through. I remember coming to and then drinking more in the same day and blacking out again. Like, I blacked out twice in the same day. And that day, I drove my car to Canton randomly, and I don't know why. I was driving my car down the highway, and I got in a collision. I was going 70 miles an hour. This is the second collision I had been in, going 70 miles an hour on the highway. I got in a collision, and I had used cocaine that day, and I had drank. And I was completely blacked out. I think I remember screaming maybe, but I'm not completely positive. I got out of the car, there was cars, it was a summer day, cars backed up for 2 miles maybe, like a mile, 2 miles. And I remember getting out of the car completely unscathed. I came to, undid my seatbelt, climbed out of my vehicle, completely fine. And to this day, I know that it was God protecting me. That's whenever my dad was leading a recovery meeting. I was forced to go to recovery meetings through the court. And basically, God did for me what I wasn't able to do for myself. I was in recovery meetings, and that's where I knew that I was desperate enough that I was like, I have to take suggestions from these people and do what they want me to do. And I was fighting it, and for the first couple of months I was there, but I was like, I was gonna go back to it. And eventually I was like, no, I can have a different life. I don't have to run anymore. I can tell through these meetings, through the transformation that my father had went through, and through what I was hearing, I was starting to learn that the problem was with me and not with my dad. And so I began to be able to talk to God and trust him. And so then that's when transformation started to happen. I started to take the music that I was doing secularly, I put it away for a little while, tried to develop a relationship with God, and then eventually I felt like I was called to start making music for him. And now I'm in recovery. I'm involved in so many different things that are recovery based, speaking in the community and making powerful music for who I now know, Jesus. Like, I'm so thankful now for what he's done, because from my whole childhood into most of my adult life so far, I felt hopeless.
You go.
Go ahead, bro.
For me, it was strange being on the other side of addiction. When he got in a car accident, to get that call was terrifying. I remember going to the police station and I just knew in my heart that God was giving him a second chance. It really opened my eyes to what I put my kids through. And them having to worry about their dad coming home. It's amazing, honestly, that Austin and I are both alive. It's amazing. The odds were against us. And I prayed to God a lot, man, that he rescued Austin like he rescued me.
What did that look like on your end, man, of the chaos in your life reaching ahead, and your dad now being on the other side of things, being the sober voice and the example speaking into your life?
That's just crazy, bro. Because no one really knows how to deal with the pain in their own life and get real about it and get serious about it or whatever. So it just becomes life. It's just crazy to look back on it 2 years and some months later and feel like I don't even remember it. Like, I feel completely separated from it. Like, completely delivered and separated. Like, I can't express the gratefulness that I have in my heart that I get to just go hang out at my dad's house like friends, dude. I get on his nerves all the time, but
no.
And vice versa.
Not me.
We're too much alike. It is amazing to me, and I think about it often, and I thank God every day for his blessings, because I know towards the end of my using days, God was speaking very loudly to me that if you just trust me, I will restore your life. And he has done that tenfold. You know, God kept his word, man. I mean, he said, I will restore your life if you trust me, and he has. He really has. And you know, it's I get to live a miracle every day, you know.
Facts.
I really do.
And what's amazing about it is, like, he's not done yet.